Hello, welcome to NoLugar.com. We are here to discuss Senator Richard Lugar and the reasons it is imperative that we do not send him back to the Senate in 2012. This campaign to educate was conceived when he endorsed and voted to confirm Elena Kagan to the United States Supreme Court. Elena Kagan is a left-wing activist judge. Our nation is stuck with her until she retires or passes. Senator Lugar's contribution to this travesty alone is reason enough to remove him from office. All that needed to be known about Elena Kagan was presented by Senator Jeff Sessions in his opening statement on the first day of the confirmation hearings. The entire transcript of his remarks can be found on the sidebar, and I encourage you to read it. I'm going to summarize a few of the most relevant details. Senator Lugar was without excuse. Ms. Kagan's college thesis on socialism in New York bemoans socialism's demise there. In her master's thesis, she affirmed the activist tendencies of the Earl Warren Court, but complained that they could have done a better job justifying their activism. She was the central figure in the Clinton-Gore effort to restrict gun rights. Documents show that Ms. Kagan was perhaps the key person who convinced President Clinton to change his mind from supporting to opposing legislation that would have banned partial birth abortions. Partial birth abortions. Helpless, breathing, often crying precious babies tossed in a bucket to die. Should someone who does not know that this is wrong be placed anywhere near a bench to judge anything? As dean at Harvard, Ms. Kagan reversed Harvard's existing policy and kicked the military out of the recruiting office in direct violation of federal law. As Solicitor General, Ms. Kagan told the court that the speech and press guarantees in the First Amendment would allow the federal government to ban the publication of pamphlets discussing political issues before an election. She also approved the filing of a brief to the Supreme Court asking that it strike down provisions of the Legal Arizona Workers Act even after the liberal Ninth Circuit upheld the law. And despite promises to this very committee that she would vigorously defend the Congress's don't ask, don't tell policy for the military if it were ever challenged in court, the actions she has taken as Solicitor General do appear to have deliberately and unnecessarily placed that law in jeopardy. She said one thing and did another. She clerked for two well-known activist judges, and she is called Israeli judge Aaron Barak, who has been described as the most activist judge in the world, as her hero. President Obama advocates a judicial philosophy that calls on judges to base their decisions on empathy and their broader vision of what America should be. He suggests that his nominee shares those same views. Elena Kagan would have been confirmed without Senator Lugar's vote. The Democrats had an overwhelming majority. Calls to Senator Lugar's office to oppose this position he was taking had no effect. He sent a letter defending his position. The letter was ludicrous. Please read it for yourself. It's also in the sidebar. He said he was making the choice because he thought her testimony at the hearings proved she was qualified. Apparently, he didn't think anything she did or said in the past 30 years was a relevant reflection of who she was or how she would behave in the future. He further defended his position by printing the transcript of a speech he gave when introducing John Roberts for his Supreme Court hearing 6 years ago. He highlighted with bold type his understanding that the founders were adamant that passionate politics not permeate those who would sit on the bench. Elena Kagan said she would not be an activist judge at the hearings. Senator Lugar deemed her qualified just for saying so, completely ignoring the screaming evidence of the testimony of her actions in previous statements. My mom drives a school bus. She puts all of the misbehaving boys in the seats up front so she can monitor their conversations and actions. Just because Johnny says to her every time he gets on the bus, "Mrs. Kitchell, I promise I'll behave if you just let me sit in the back," doesn't mean he gets to go sit in the back. Words are meaningless if not followed by appropriate actions and behaviors. This is common sense. Apparently, Senator Lugar has lost his. And this is his campaign literature. It even says, his campaign literature, words speak volumes, actions speak louder. And on the third to last page of this brochure, it has a section that says Senator Lugar supported conservative judges, and goes on to say Lugar led the confirmation fight for Chief Justice Roberts and for Justices Scalia, Thomas, and Alito. Why is he not bragging about his accomplishments for Elena Kagan in this brochure? Does that make any sense? In his letter defending his decision, Senator Lugar points out the fact that 50 years ago, Supreme Court nominees didn't even testify before the committee. He completely misses the point that he brings up. They didn't testify because back then the nominees were judged by their actions and record. They knew what the nominee would say by what he had done. Lying was not so fashionable back then. President Obama has made it plain that he believes that our Constitution is incomplete, only defining restraints on the government. He would like to change it, expanding it into what government should do. The only way for him, or anyone like him in the future, to accomplish this is to try to fill our Supreme Court with activist judges with life terms. Activist judges want to change our laws. We already suffer from too many of them appointed in high places. Just a month ago, our Indiana legislators governed in accord with the will of the majority. Tough illegal immigration laws, stricter abortion laws, and one liberal on a bench can stop us all. Senator Lugar's actions in supporting Elena Kagan have inexcusably jeopardized the future of our great nation and the freedoms that our fathers and grandfathers have fought to preserve. Senator Lugar needs to be retired.